It was a quiet evening on the edge of a small southern town, where the sun had dipped low and the streets held a certain stillness. A black army lieutenant, dressed in uniform, was driving home from duty. His badge shone beneath the dashboard light, a symbol of service, discipline, and sacrifice. But that didn't stop the flashing red and blue lights from appearing in his rearview mirror. What started as a routine traffic stop would turn into a national outrage. An officer with a racist vendetta, a gun drawn in fear or hatred, and a single shot that would echo across the country. Welcome to Talecraft, where stories aren't just told, they're remembered. If this is your first time here, hit like, share this video, and subscribe for powerful narratives that matter. But before you scroll past, let me ask you this. If someone serves their country in uniform, do they deserve to be treated like a criminal because of their skin color? Today's story is not just another case. It's a turning point. A moment where injustice met accountability. A tale where the power of the Pentagon became the voice of the unheard. And the silence of authority was shattered. This wasn't just a cop overstepping boundaries. This was a calculated abuse of power. The lieutenant, calm and compliant, was pulled from his vehicle at gunpoint, accused without reason and ultimately shot, all captured on body cam footage that would horrify the nation. But what happened next is what no one saw coming. The military, known for discipline and tradition, didn't issue a press release or offer condolences. They moved with force, precision, and finality. The story became a fuse, one that lit up every room where injustice hid, one that pushed the question to the highest halls of power: how far is too far? In a world where too many victims become just another hashtag, the Pentagon's response shocked even the harshest critics. The man who wore the badge that night was no longer shielded by bureaucracy. The system didn't sweep it under the rug this time, it turned the full weight of its authority against one of its own. And in doing so, it reminded the nation, justice may be slow, but it doesn't always come quietly. This tale isn't about revenge. It's about reckoning. And how one man's pain became a rallying cry for dignity, reform, and above all, consequence. So why does this story matter? Because somewhere tonight, another young black soldier is driving home, hoping his uniform is enough to protect him. Because somewhere, an officer might be testing the limits of power unchecked. And because silence has never protected the innocent. That's why Talecraft exists, to give voice to the stories others try to bury. Stay with us as we walk through the moments that led to a gunshot, a nation's fury, and an ending so unexpected it left history gasping. This isn't just a tale of tragedy, it's one of justice reclaimed. Before the flashing lights and raised guns, there was just Lieutenant Darren Cole. 31 years old, proud son of a Baptist preacher and a nurse, born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama. From an early age, Darren stood out, not because he was loud but because he listened. He played chess instead of basketball and read military strategy books like others read comics. He graduated top of his class in high school, then went straight into ROTC with one mission in mind: to serve his country with honor, even if that country didn't always honor men who looked like him. Darren's record was spotless: 2 tours overseas, a Bronze Star, fluent in Arabic, and a quiet leader among his peers. His soldiers called him Captain Calm, even though he was still a lieutenant. That night, he was driving home from a base meeting, wearing his fatigues, thinking about calling his mom when he got back. His SUV had just rolled through a sleepy town on the Virginia border when it happened. The blue and red lights. The blaring horn. He wasn't speeding. He hadn't swerved. There was no broken taillight. And yet, 2 patrol cars boxed him in like a fugitive. Instinct kicked in. Darren turned on his hazard lights and drove slowly to a gas station, the nearest well-lit area. That's what military training taught him. Stay visible, stay alive. He put both hands on the steering wheel, made no sudden moves, and waited. But what came next was not protocol, it was a performance of power. Officer Ray Matheson stormed toward the vehicle, hand already on his gun, barking commands without clarity. Out of the car. Now. Darren spoke calmly, "I'm an active-duty Army officer, sir. I haven't done anything wrong." But the badge before him wasn't interested in conversation. Ray Matheson was no rookie. 18 years on the force, dozens of misconduct complaints, but no real consequences. A man with a chip on his shoulder and a target in his sights. That night he wasn't pulling over a driver, he was pulling rank. He saw a black man in military gear and felt threatened, not by a weapon but by confidence. Darren's composure enraged him. Body cam footage later revealed him shouting, "You're about to ride the lightning." A crude reference to tasers and death. It wasn't law enforcement. It was domination. Darren still didn't move. He simply said, I'm afraid to get out. The footage would later become national news, but in that moment, Darren didn't know who was watching, only that his life depended on not making a single wrong move. The second officer, silent and uneasy, glanced back and forth. He'd seen stops like this before. But Ray was escalating and fast. He yanked the door handle but it was locked. Darren repeated, "Sir, I'm not resisting." That was when the window shattered. Glass sprayed like shrapnel and Darren's hands went up instinctively. That's when the shot rang out. Not a warning. Not a taser. A bullet to the shoulder. A life interrupted. Lieutenant Darren Cole fell sideways in his seat, blood blooming across his chest. His only crime? Driving while black in uniform. He was cuffed before medics arrived. No Miranda rights. No apology. Just the sound of boots scraping pavement and radio chatter. But even as the pain overtook him, Darren's training kept him breathing, alert and focused. "Don't pass out," he muttered to himself. "What? Witness. Remember." And he would. Because Darren wasn't just a victim, he would become a symbol. And in the coming days, his story would climb the ranks until it reached the very heart of the Pentagon. The gas station lights flickered above like indifferent stars as bystanders began to gather, phones raised, mouths open in disbelief. The officer's body cam caught every second, shouts, broken glass, the explosive crack of a gunshot. The lieutenant slumped, bleeding, and the cop backed up, gun still raised as if expecting a firefight from an unarmed soldier. Darren Cole's blood seeped across the car seat, his uniform darkening with each second. The silence after the shot was eerie. No one moved. The second officer stared, frozen. Bystanders screamed. Sirens grew louder. But in that moment, history had already been rewritten. Paramedics rushed in minutes later, cutting away Darren's uniform, one he had worn through foreign deserts and domestic storms. His dog tags clinked onto the concrete. The officer who pulled the trigger, Ray Matheson, paced in circles, justifying his decision to anyone who'd listen. "He was reaching," he barked even though the footage showed no movement at all. The medic stabilized Darren. He was lucky the bullet missed his heart but not by much. Still conscious, Darren whispered, "I want my commanding officer notified." It was a phrase that would travel further than even he could imagine. The video went viral by morning. Uploaded by an onlooker, it exploded across every platform: YouTube, Twitter, TikTok. The image of a bloodied Army lieutenant, hands raised and voice trembling, became a modern symbol of everything wrong with law enforcement. Hashtags surged, hashtag justice for LT Cole, hashtag shot in uniform, hashtag when service isn't enough. Veterans began reposting the footage in rage, not just black veterans, but white, Latino, Asian, all brothers and sisters in arms. "That could have been me," one Marine tweeted. "We were trained to survive enemy fire, not American cops." The fury didn't stop at the public. It shot straight up the chain of command. At Fort Belvoir, the commanding general was in disbelief. He watched the footage twice, then called the Pentagon. Within hours, high-ranking officials were briefed. The Secretary of Defense ordered a formal inquiry into the case. Normally, such cases would be left to civil courts, but this wasn't normal. This was one of their own, in uniform on American soil, shot without cause. Whispers turned into directives. Military legal teams were mobilized. The question wasn't just what the cop did, it was whether the Pentagon had the moral courage to respond in a way that matched the gravity of the act. Meanwhile, Officer Ray Matheson was placed on administrative leave, standard protocol, they claimed. But public pressure was mounting. Protesters surrounded the courthouse. Military bases across the country lowered flags to half-staff, not because Darren had died but because justice had. Interviews with his family revealed a heartbreaking truth. Darren had written to his younger brother just a week before saying, "I feel like no matter what I wear, I'm still a target." That sentence was now quoted on signs held by veterans standing shoulder to shoulder with civilians. The divide between the military and the justice system had never felt wider. The mayor of the town gave a press conference. Carefully worded. Non-committal. "We're waiting for all the facts." But the public already had the facts: the footage, the blood, the silence. Darren's recovery was slow. His shoulder shattered, nerve damage likely permanent. But he survived. And from his hospital bed, he made a statement. "I will not be silent. Not for me. Not for others in uniform who face what I faced." That sentence alone was replayed across major news networks for days. It wasn't just a recovery. It was a resistance. Darren wasn't just healing, he was preparing to fight back. As the days passed, civilian courts stalled, but the Pentagon didn't. They issued a public condemnation of the officer's actions and quietly began internal proceedings. The military didn't just see this as a crime, they saw it as an insult to the nation's uniform. While the world watched, something rare began to unfold. An institution known for its silence had decided to speak. Loudly. With force. What started as a single bullet was now a spark. And the fire was just beginning to burn. The question now was not if justice would come, but how far the Pentagon was willing to go. At the Pentagon, the mood had shifted from concern to fury. Darren Cole wasn't just a soldier. He was a commissioned officer of the United States Army, wrongfully shot in uniform on American soil. Top-ranking generals reviewed the footage in stunned silence. One slammed his fist against the table and muttered, "This isn't just about race. This is about power run amok." The Joint Chiefs were briefed. The Department of Defense Legal Division launched an unprecedented independent investigation. Behind closed doors, plans were being formed, not only to seek justice through the courts, but to send a message that would never be forgotten. The military had seen injustice before, but rarely had it struck so personally. Darren had been exemplary, a rising leader, respected in every circle he moved in. The Defense Secretary authorized an internal military tribunal to examine whether Darren's rights as an active duty officer had been violated. The decision stunned the nation. It meant the Pentagon was bypassing civilian inaction. This wasn't symbolic. It was lethal. Military prosecutors began reviewing Ray Matheson's history, dozens of misconduct reports, internal affairs complaints, racial bias accusations, none of which had ever led to real consequences. Until now. The hammer of military justice was about to fall. Matheson, meanwhile, had gone into hiding. His home was surrounded by media vans and protesters day and night. The local police department issued vague statements. "We support the process. We stand by our officers." But that didn't shield them from the pressure. When the Pentagon's legal summons arrived at the department, jaws dropped. For the first time in modern history, a civilian officer was being summoned by the military under Uniform Code of Military Justice Section 802, which permits jurisdiction when military personnel are assaulted in uniform during official duties. It wasn't just bold, it was historical. A date was set. The hearing would take place at a military court in Virginia, closed to the public but monitored closely by federal agencies and international observers. Legal analysts called it unprecedented. Civil rights leaders called it revolutionary. Darren Cole, still in recovery, testified via satellite, his face gaunt but voice unshaken. "That man looked at my skin and not my rank," he said, staring directly into the camera. He saw a threat where there was none. If he could shoot me, he could shoot anyone. His words echoed in the court like a command. No hesitation. No mercy. The trial lasted 5 days. Witnesses included fellow officers, military police experts, and even former colleagues of Matheson who spoke of his unchecked temper and racially charged remarks. His defense team tried to argue fear, confusion, poor lighting, but the body cam footage played over and over again told a different story. Jurors, mostly high-ranking military personnel, deliberated for less than 3 hours. The verdict, guilty on all counts including assault against an officer in uniform, racial targeting and dereliction of civil duty. The sentence? Immediate dishonorable discharge from public service and transfer to federal military custody for execution of sentence. When the sentence was read, the courtroom was silent. No cameras, no press, just the raw weight of history settling into stone. The Pentagon later released a statement. No individual, regardless of badge or background, is above the principles of honor and justice. Today we uphold the values our soldiers are sworn to protect. It wasn't the death penalty that shocked the world, it was the swiftness. Within 72 hours, Matheson was escorted to a classified detention facility. Though exact details were sealed, sources confirmed the Pentagon had exercised its authority to carry out a military execution for crimes against a commissioned officer. The world reacted with a mix of awe and disbelief. Some called it justice. Others, revenge. But for Darren Cole, it wasn't about vengeance, it was about validation. The uniform meant something again. It was protected, honored, defended. Protests quieted. Military bases held silent ceremonies. The president called Darren personally and thanked him for his courage. "You made this nation reckon with itself," he said. But Darren, humble as ever, replied, "I just didn't want to die in my own country." The Pentagon's response had not just changed policy, it had rewritten the rules of accountability. And the world was paying attention. In the months that followed, Lieutenant Darren Cole returned to active duty, not in the field but as an advocate for reform. His presence at hearings, policy meetings, and training briefings reminded every officer and official that one man's silence nearly cost him his life. His voice now carried the weight of a generation. Darren never sought revenge. What he wanted was change, lasting, real, and unshakable. He once told a group of cadets, "Your rank doesn't make you invincible, but your silence can make you invisible. Don't wait until the sirens come to speak up." His story had become a legacy. The Pentagon's decision to act so swiftly shattered decades of political hesitation. For once, the machine of bureaucracy had turned toward justice rather than away from it. New guidelines were introduced. Officers who interacted with active duty personnel would now be required to undergo recognition training. More importantly, any incident involving a uniformed service member would trigger automatic federal review. Darren's case became the blueprint, the symbol, the wake-up call. His blood didn't just stain a car seat, it stained a system too long untouched. But from that stain rose a movement that refused to be erased or silenced ever again. To many, this story sounds like something out of a movie. A racist cop, a courageous soldier, a military tribunal, an execution. But for those who live on the edge of society's blind spots, it was very real. Darren's courage forced an entire nation to ask itself, who gets to wear the uniform without fear? Who gets pulled over without bleeding? Who gets justice without begging? These aren't just questions for politicians, they're questions for all of us. Every viewer, every citizen, every officer. Because justice delayed is not just justice denied, it's a warning of what silence can cost. And so now we ask you, what will you do with this story? Will you scroll past or will you share it? Will you turn down the volume or will you raise your voice? At Tailcraft, we don't just tell stories, we pass on torches. Stories like Darren Cole's deserve more than headlines, they deserve heartbeats. And if his bravery moved you, if it reminded you that one life can make a nation stop and look at itself, then let it be the start, not the end, of your voice in this conversation. Silence is no longer an option. Not anymore. Thank you for watching Tailcraft, where every tale holds truth. If this story stirred something in you, like, share, and subscribe to stay connected to the stories that matter. And most importantly, drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear from you. What would justice look like to you? What would you have done in Darren's place? These conversations matter. Your voice matters. Because sometimes the tale we tell isn't just about the past, it's a map for what we must do next. Until next time, stay bold, stay aware, and never stop crafting truth from silence.